In this video, I will tell you 7 things you should avoid to become rich. And some of these things I already knew before I became rich, others I really wish I'd known sooner, but only learned after. That's why I'm sharing them all with you. Hope you like it. And if you like it, please don't forget to follow this channel. Let's dive in. The first thing you should avoid is miraculous promises. Well, nothing in this world is free. And I'm not just talking about scams, I'm talking about real life. You shouldn't trust just anyone, especially those who make you crazy promises. Believe me, as a businessman, I've shaken many hands I knew I couldn't trust. I've gotten out of trouble by not believing in other people's miraculous promises. The better the story, the worse the math, and the easier it is to fall for it. That's why the rich don't get seduced by promises. They get obsessed with processes. They don't ask, how fast can this grow? They ask, what would have to be true for this to actually work? Because if the numbers don't make sense, the promise never will. The best way to never fall for traps is different in finance and in business. In finance is basically make the math. If someone claims they can make you 30%, 40%, or 50% per year without risk, they're not offering you an investment. They're offering you fiction. At 10% a year, your money doubles roughly every 7 years. At 30% a year, it doubles every 2.5 years. At 50%, it doubles every 20 months. Now ask yourself, if that were really possible, how many years would it take for the person selling it to become a billionaire themselves? And in business, the math is different, but the principle is the same. Because in business, miraculous promises don't come from financial advisors. They come from partners, suppliers, and executives who say things like, we'll 10 times sales next quarter. This product will dominate the market. Don't worry about the costs. Growth will cover it. I've heard all of them. And every time someone promises fast success with zero trade-offs, they're either naive or they're hiding something. Well, the second thing you should avoid is the wrong advisors. In this part, forget the lone wolf mentality. Your connections matter more than you think. A Harvard economist, Raj Chetty, analyzed the social networks of over 72 million people to understand why some people build wealth while others never escape the middle. The conclusion surprised everyone. The key difference wasn't talent, hard work, or education. It was connection. Chetty found that people who grow up around or later build genuine friendships with wealthier individuals have a far higher chance of moving up financially. Just having richer friends can increase your future income by up to 20%. Not because the rich hand out money, but because they hand out perspective. They normalize ambition. They make success feel reachable. And most importantly, they connect you to opportunities you wouldn't even know existed. To prove it, Chetty compared 2 U.S. cities, Minneapolis and Indianapolis. Same country, same economy, same government policies. But kids from low-income families in Minneapolis, where rich and poor actually interact, earn $10,000 more per year as adults than those from Indianapolis. Because the kids in Minneapolis saw how wealth works and learned from people who already knew the path. That's the secret no one tells you. Your environment is silently compounding, just like your money. If you spend your time around small thinkers, you inherit their limitations. If you surround yourself with ambitious, capable people, you inherit their standards. Who you listen to shapes your future. If your closest circle is full of people who always complain, always blame, and never grow, that's not a social group, that's a financial ceiling. And here's the hard truth. Most people don't stay poor because they're lazy. They stay poor because they take advice from people who've never built anything. Every successful person I know has one thing in common. They outgrew their echo chamber. They stopped listening to people who only had opinions and started listening to people with results. Moving to the third thing, you should avoid bad jobs. I was once an intern at a very large company. You probably know it, but I won't say its name. I remember looking around the office one afternoon. Everyone was nice, competent, polite, and tired. They came in at the same time, took lunch at the same time, and left at the same time. And I remember thinking, if I stay here, that's exactly who I'll become. But what's essentially a bad job? A bad job is any place where your effort and return disconnect. In a healthy business equation, your output should be proportional to your input. The more value you create, the more you grow. But in a bad job, the equation breaks. You can work twice as hard and the result barely moves. That's when you know the system is broken, when effort no longer scales. In math, if your output, Y, stops increasing even when your input, X, does, the curve starts to flatten. Economists call this diminishing marginal returns. Each extra unit of effort produces less and less value. Now imagine applying that to your career. Every extra hour, every new project, every late night adds almost nothing to your personal growth or future income. That's what a bad job is, a flat curve. So the practical advice I have to give is, as I used to be a recruiter, the best time to find another job is while you're employed. Don't quit out of the blue. Go for interviews, look for another position, or start your business slowly, and only quit when you have a plan be. Of course, without being a terrible employee, don't leave any loose ends, help in any way you can, and continue giving your best until the last day. Well, the fourth thing you should avoid is blame the others. I once told my boss when I was an intern, I'm doing my best, but this guy won't help me. And I lost two things. The first thing I lost was credibility because I said I was doing my best, and my best wasn't good enough. And the second was reputation because besides making mistakes, I was blaming someone else. When you're young, things aren't so clear. But I learned that every time you point a finger, you lose control of your own growth. It's not just motivational talk, it's science. Psychologists call it locus of control. It's the degree to which people believe they have power over the outcomes in their lives. Those with an internal locus of control believe success comes from effort, discipline, and decisions. Those with an external locus of control believe success or failure comes from luck, the economy, their boss, or someone else's choices. Here's the important part. Dozens of studies show that people with a strong internal locus of control earn more money, perform better at work, and have higher well-being. One of the largest long-term studies published in Psychological Science tracked thousands of people for over a decade. It found that individuals who believed they controlled their own destiny earned significantly higher incomes by age 30, regardless of their IQ or background. Another study from the Journal of Economic Behavior and Organization found that entrepreneurs with an internal locus of control were more likely to start businesses, grow them faster, and recover from failures because they saw every obstacle as feedback, not injustice. When you blame others, your brain actually relaxes. You get a short-term emotional reward, a hit of relief. It's not my fault, but in the long term, it kills performance. Because when the cause is always external, the solution never starts with you. That's why the richest, most successful people tend to take radical ownership, even for things that technically aren't their fault. They understand that blaming others might protect your ego, but it destroys your power to change. So here's the rule. The moment you say, it's not my fault, you've already given up control of the outcome. Rich people don't waste time blaming others. They analyze, adjust, and move. Because responsibility might be heavy, but it's the only thing that puts you in the driver's seat. The fifth thing you should avoid if you want to become rich is people-pleasing. I'm not the cool guy. I can't be. I'm the founder of a large company with thousands of employees, multiple offices, and decisions that affect hundreds of lives every single day. That means I can't afford to be liked all the time. Because leadership isn't about being popular. It's about being responsible. And responsibility often means saying no to things that make people like you in the short term, but destroy the business in the long run. Also, I've had millions of followers for a long time, and being famous is part of my business. So my image is very important. I receive hundreds of thousands of messages every day criticizing me, my ideals, and my principles, and I would be a terrible leader if I threw in the towel and listened to every single one of them. What I mean is, I definitely wouldn't be rich if I lived for the approval of others. Rich people aren't people pleasers. Research from the University of Minnesota shows that people who score high in approval motivation are less likely to make decisive calls, take risks, or lead effectively. They avoid friction. And in business, friction is often where growth happens. Trying to make everyone happy eventually makes everyone miserable. Because when you please one person, you disappoint another. And usually the person you disappoint most is yourself. That's why the best leaders don't chase approval. They chase alignment. They're kind, but not soft. Empathetic, but not permissive. They understand that sometimes you have to disappoint people to protect the mission. The sixth thing you should avoid is procrastination. A 2018 study from the American Psychological Association found that around 20% of adults identify as chronic procrastinators, and that number jumps to nearly 70% among college students and early professionals. And man, I see this a lot in younger people. I remember one guy in particular, a brilliant kid. He wanted to start a small marketing agency. He had the skills, a few potential clients, even the equipment. I told him, launch now. You'll learn faster by doing than by thinking. He said, I just want to make sure everything's perfect first. That was 3 years ago. He's still planning, still broke. The problem is, wealth doesn't reward effort. It rewards execution. And I really understand where procrastination comes from. It's fear. No one procrastinates something easy. We always procrastinate what seems impossible. And luckily, I have the solution. There's a psychological principle behind this called the Zygarnik effect, discovered by Russian psychologist Bluma Zygarnik in the 1920s. She found that people remember and complete unfinished tasks more effectively than ones they haven't started. In other words, once you begin, your brain wants to finish. So the only thing you need to do is take the first step, even if it ends up failing. For example, if you're procrastinating investing, just put $100 into anything. You'll force yourself to study and build a portfolio. If you're procrastinating starting a business, just do the paperwork. Call your first client. You'll have to figure it out. The last but not least thing you should avoid is high interest debt. Because nothing builds wealth slower than paying someone else for the privilege of using your own future money. In finance, interest is either your greatest ally or your worst enemy. When you invest, it compounds for you. When you borrow recklessly, it compounds against you. If you owe $5,000 on a credit card with a 25% annual rate and you only make minimum payments, it'll take you over 10 years to pay it off, and you'll end up giving the bank more than $6,000 in interest alone. That means you'll pay more in interest than what you borrowed. According to the U.S. Federal Reserve, Americans now carry over $1.3 trillion in credit card debt, with the average interest rate above 22%, the highest in history. That's not financial flexibility, that's financial quicksand. So this advice is direct and straightforward. If you want to get rich, you have to avoid debt as much as possible, and if you have debts, pay them off as quickly as possible before investing and make it a priority in your life, even if it means you have to work overtime, freelance, sell old things, renegotiate, and pay off your debt. As long as you have bad debt, you are miserable. Well, that's it, cousins. Stay invested.